Sometimes the most selfless thing you can do is step away, especially when you don't know how to love yourself enough to love others properly. My father's legacy left me with a lot of unhealed wounds. The act of ghosting was never about spite, it was about protection. It was me learning to protect my emotional health in a world where love was conditional. The pain of walking away was far less painful than the pain of staying. My father taught me that people will always disappoint you, and sometimes the best choice is to disappear into the silence. I had to ghost you because I was facing the raw truth of how much my father's actions had shaped me. I needed time to heal and break free from the cycle of emotional neglect. I never wanted to ghost you, but sometimes you have to walk away from things to create space for something better. It's a painful lesson learned from a father who never showed me how to live with love. The silence of ghosting felt like the only way I could find my own voice again. Years of emotional neglect left me without the tools to communicate my pain. I had to disappear to heal. You didn't deserve to be ghosted, but you didn't see the years of hurt and confusion I carried with me. My father's actions created a chasm that I needed to step away from to understand myself better. I walked away because I was scared of repeating the past. My father never showed me how to make love work, and I was afraid of doing the same to you. Ghosting was my way of breaking that cycle. My father's abandonment wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. And sometimes the only way to break free from the ghost of his influence is to ghost everything that keeps you stuck in the past. The hardest part about ghosting was realizing that I wasn't just running away from you, but from the things inside of me that I hadn't yet learned to heal. I ghosted you not because I didn't care, but because I needed to care for myself first. My father's neglect taught me that sometimes you have to disappear to remember who you truly are. I walked away because I knew I had to. I had to stop the cycle of emotional distance that had been ingrained in me. Ghosting was my way of breaking free from a past that never let me be fully present. The reason I ghosted you isn't because I didn't love you. It's because I had to learn to love myself first. My father's neglect left me with a lot of emotional scars that I needed to heal on my own. Sometimes the only way to heal is to create space between you and everything that hurts. Ghosting was never easy, but it was the only way I could take control of my emotional well-being. When you're raised by someone who can't give you love, you learn to survive without it. Ghosting wasn't a rejection of you. It was a rejection of the patterns that had kept me trapped for far too long. The space between us was never about you. It was about me finding the courage to walk away from everything that had been holding me back. I ghosted because I had to finally stand up for myself. My father taught me that love could be painful and that pain sometimes makes you want to retreat. Ghosting was a way for me to heal, to break free from the pain and try to rebuild who I really am. I needed to disappear in order to rediscover myself. The lessons I learned growing up made it hard to stay, but walking away was the first step in learning to love myself again. Ghosting wasn't a reflection of you, it was a reflection of the internal struggle I was going through. The trauma of my father's actions left me unable to connect in the way I wanted to. I ghosted you because I wasn't ready to face the truth about myself. The emotional scars my father left behind made it difficult to be open with others. I had to walk away to understand who I really was. I never wanted to hurt you, but I had to hurt myself first. Ghosting was the painful decision I made to create space for healing. I couldn't give you my heart until I could give it back to myself. My father's ghost has haunted me in every relationship I've ever had. I ghosted you because I needed time to break free from his influence and start healing in ways that no one else could understand. Ghosting was not a decision I took lightly. It was my way of saying, I need space to heal from all the emotional baggage that my father left me with. It wasn't about you, it was about me. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is facing the fact that you have to let go of everything, including people, to make room for the new. Ghosting wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to step back and ghost everything because I needed to find the pieces of myself that my father's absence had stolen. I needed to reconnect with my heart before I could offer it to anyone else. The truth is, I never realized how much my father's actions affected me until I had to step away from everything that no longer felt right. Sometimes, stepping away is the only way to protect yourself from the past repeating itself. Ghosting wasn't a choice, it was survival. I needed to heal from wounds that ran deeper than I ever understood before. It's not about you, it's about me and my journey to becoming whole again. When the world around you has been chaotic and untrustworthy, the decision to walk away is less about avoidance and more about reclaiming your peace. My father taught me that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. I ghosted you because I had to protect the little pieces of me that had been shattered for so long. It wasn't intentional, but sometimes our past leaves us no other option but to disconnect from anything that doesn't serve our healing. My father's shadow looms over every decision I make, and walking away was one way to break free from the patterns he created. I'm not sorry for choosing myself for once. The decision to ghost wasn't an act of malice, but rather an act of self-preservation. Sometimes the hardest thing is realizing that the people you care about might also be the ones unknowingly causing you harm. Ghosting was never about punishing you. It was about reclaiming my space from the emotional weight my father left behind. I needed to breathe without his influence controlling my actions. You don't realize how much your upbringing shapes you until you find yourself repeating patterns you swore you'd avoid. Ghosting wasn't just a choice, it was a way to stop the cycle from continuing. My father's actions taught me that love isn't always unconditional and that boundaries are a form of protection. When I ghosted you, I was finally learning how to put up those boundaries. In the silence of ghosting, I found my voice. The voice that was buried under years of fear, hurt, and silence. I had to walk away to remember that I am allowed to choose my own happiness. It wasn't just a moment of ghosting, it was the culmination of years of trying to find peace in a world that felt chaotic. Sometimes, the hardest part of healing is letting go of the people who were part of your pain. I had to disappear for a while to figure out who I was without the expectations and wounds of my past dictating my every move. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for me to find clarity. When you grow up in an environment where silence becomes the norm, you start believing that ghosting is just another way of surviving. It's not about you, it's about finding my own peace. I didn't ghost you because I didn't care. I ghosted you because I didn't know how to show love without repeating the patterns I learned from my father. I needed time to unlearn everything. You've never understood why I walked away, but it was because I had to face things within myself that I wasn't ready to confront. Ghosting was the only way I knew how to deal with the chaos in my head. Sometimes the hardest part of breaking away from old patterns is the pain of disconnecting from those you thought would be different. Ghosting was my way of learning to protect my heart from the damage I feared repeating. When you grow up with emotional distance, you learn how to emotionally distance yourself from others. It's not intentional, it's a learned coping mechanism. Ghosting was my way of surviving. I was so afraid of repeating the same mistakes my father made that I chose silence over explanation. It wasn't an easy decision, but sometimes walking away is the only way to stop the cycle. Every time I tried to connect, I could feel the weight of the past pushing me away. My father's actions left scars that I didn't know how to explain, so I ghosted instead. It wasn't an act of cruelty, but a cry for help. Ghosting wasn't my way of saying I didn't care. It was my way of saying I needed space to figure out who I am apart from the damage my father's actions left behind. My father never showed me how to handle relationships with love, so I had to teach myself the only way I knew, through silence and distance. It wasn't an easy lesson, but it was necessary for my healing. Sometimes we ghost people not because we don't care, but because we care too much to repeat the mistakes that were passed down to us. I had to step away to learn how to love healthily. I ghosted you because I needed to confront the pain that was buried deep inside me. It wasn't about punishing you, it was about freeing myself from the chains of the past. My father's absence taught me that I had to fend for myself, and in doing so, I lost the ability to connect with others here's the way I wanted to. Ghosting was just the symptom of a much deeper issue.